SpaceX just paid $185 million for 217 acres in Memphis. And that price only really clicks if you know who's leasing the compute on the other side. This is the Data Center Daily. I'm Cassidy, Matt's here. Today we're on the Memphis asset transfer ending, a congressional hearing putting murky water on display, and whether AI compute as a standalone business survives a 90-day exit clause.
And the stranded asset question I've been chewing on all week just got a strange answer. The landlord and the compute seller are the same org chart now.
Phoenix Investors affiliate out, SpaceX subsidiary in, $185 million on the deed. Let's start there. Here's PR Newswire.
An affiliate of Phoenix Investors, Phoenix, announced the sale of the 217 acres and 785,000 square foot data center located at 3231 Paul R. Lowry Road in Memphis, Tennessee, to a subsidiary of SpaceX for $185 million. The building is commonly referred to as Colossus 1, the first data center of xAI.
Quick Memphis update. SpaceX has bought the Colossus 1 site outright. $185 million, 217 acres, 785,000 square feet. Buyer listed as a SpaceX subsidiary. Seller listed as a Phoenix Investors affiliate. That's the deed. Tuesday, we had the compute lease. Friday, we had the $15 billion annual revenue figure from the S1. And now we've got the real estate closing. 3 different facts, same address.
Here's the shift. Before Friday, a third-party developer was carrying the stranded asset risk if Anthropic used that 90-day termination clause. Now, a Musk-controlled entity is the landlord. The problem didn't disappear, it just got pulled inside one org chart.
And that matters, because this isn't one of those announced versus signed situations. PR Newswire gave us a named price and named parties. That's a closed transaction, not a letter of intent.
Right. But now, if Anthropic walks, it doesn't strand Phoenix. It strands Elon's balance sheet. So does that change how hard xAI actually pushes the termination clause? Or does it just make the lawsuit a little more entertaining?
This one's from CIO.
The filing disclosed that Anthropic agreed to purchase compute services delivered through xAI's Colossus and Colossus 2 AI infrastructure clusters through May 2029 under an agreement valued at roughly $1.25 billion per month.
The load-bearing source on the xAI-Anthropic compute story is the SpaceX S1 filing, and it's carrying real weight. Anthropic is buying from Colossus and Colossus 2 through May 2029 at roughly $1.25 billion a month, and SpaceX named it as a material customer relationship in an IPO disclosure. That's not a trend thesis, that's a liability schedule.
$15 billion a year through 2029 is the headline, sure. But SpaceX also said it may enter into additional compute capacity agreements with third parties, which is basically telling future public shareholders the Anthropic deal is a template, not a one-off. You don't put that in an S1 unless you're pitching a recurring revenue model.
CIO's AI compute as a standalone business framing gets part of the way there. But the structure is still one disclosed customer, one filing, and SpaceX's own caveat that future deals may happen. That market structure argument lives or dies on whether a second agreement ever gets signed.
And the filing also confirms a 90-day termination clause on Anthropic's side. So a standalone business with one named client who can leave in 3 months is really just a very expensive option on future utilization. SpaceX buying the land for $185 million makes more sense now. They're taking the risk onto their own books instead of leaving it with a third-party developer.
Here's Baswati Guha Majumdar at International Business Times, Singapore edition.
The U.S. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has called for federal and congressional investigations into whether large-scale data center construction is affecting local drinking water supplies in Georgia, spotlighting growing concerns over the environmental impact of America's AI infrastructure boom.
AOC showed up to a House Energy and Commerce subcommittee hearing with physical evidence. Bottles of visibly murky water, reportedly from Morgan County, Georgia, where Meta is building a major campus. EPA Assistant Administrator for Water Jessica Kramer said on the record she's gotten 0 complaints specifically tying data center construction to drinking water contamination. That's the gap the investigation request is trying to close.
The prop matters less than the permit record. Before Meta broke ground in Morgan County, did Georgia's county-level permitting process have any way to flag runoff risks to local water supplies? Because if Kramer's up there saying the EPA has no complaints on file, either nothing happened or the complaint pipeline never reaches federal water oversight. And both answers are bad.
Worth noting, the Colorado River Hydro Curtailment Warning FERC flagged 4,500 megawatts at risk from drought was a Western grid story. This is a Georgia groundwater story. Different geography, different regulatory path, same underlying constraint. AI buildout is hitting water limits from multiple directions at once, and now the political fight has gone congressional.
And unlike a FERC docket, a bottle of brown water on a hearing table has a clip. Meta's going to reach for the same communications template Google used in Missouri: responsible stewardship, working with regulators. But AOC already got Kramer on the record, so the EPA now has a congressional hook, whether or not they ever saw a complaint form.
Simply Wall Street writes,
The most relevant recent announcement is Digital Realty's record AI-focused leasing, including a 200-megawatt AI inference deal that helped lift its backlog to $1.8 billion. Together with BCN1, that backlog underpins the core catalyst of contracted future revenue tied to hyperscale and cloud customers.
Digital Realty's BCN1 opens in Sant Adrià de Besòs. 14 megawatts tied into Marseille, Madrid, Lisbon. Simply Wall Street is asking whether that reshapes the bull case, and the honest answer is no. 14 megawatts doesn't reshape anything. It's one node in a string of Mediterranean hubs, not a capacity event.
And the article's own caveat does the work here. It says this does not materially change the key risk: heavy development pipeline, refinancing exposure, tighter capital markets. 14 megawatts in Barcelona is a ribbon-cutting, not a balance sheet answer.
Worth flagging the asymmetry we pointed out earlier this week. The 36.92 gigawatt domestic interconnection queue is the capacity constraint story, while DLR's European buildout is moving on a totally different interconnection timeline. The capital is global, the queue pressure is not. BCN1 is evidence of that split, not a fix for it. Here's Finimize.
Bloomberg Intelligence's Mandeep Singh illustrated why. SpaceX's IPO prospectus said it is renting a data center to Anthropic for $1.25 billion a month, about $15 billion a year. Pair that with an estimated $45 to $50 billion to build 1 gigawatt of data center capacity, and you can get to a roughly 3.5-year payback under certain assumptions.
Finimize is leaning on the 10-year at 4.58%, and the 30-year near 5.1%, and saying Alphabet, Amazon, and Microsoft aren't blinking. Academy Securities' Peter Cheer's basic point is, if the revenue scales, mid-single-digit borrowing costs don't change the math. That's a defensible read for companies that can self-fund a meaningful chunk of the CapEx.
The hyperscalers may not care. Fine. But the piece itself says smaller AI infrastructure players and data center REITs feel funding costs a lot more. That's where the stranded asset risk gets built. Second-tier operators who levered up to chase the same build-out when treasuries were at 2% and are now financing at 5+. That asymmetry is the part the headline skips.
And the SpaceX S1 is Finimize's evidence that the revenue case is real. Anthropic, as a named material customer, helps explain why you'd borrow at 5% to build more. Still, a disclosed customer relationship in an IPO prospectus is a different evidentiary tier than a signed take-or-pay agreement. Mandeep Singh is citing the S1, and the S1 matters, but it's not a 10-year PPA.
Right. And we established Friday that Anthropic's contract has a 90-day termination clause. So the revenue supposedly justifying mid-single-digit borrowing can disappear in a quarter. A hyperscaler with internal demand has a real hedge. A REIT that signed a lease with an AI startup does not.
If AI infrastructure is why you're here, try Anthropic Pentagon Watch, a daily briefing on Anthropic's fight with the DoD over Claude, military AI use, autonomous weapons, and AI procurement blacklisting. Find it wherever you listen to podcasts. You'll find links to every story we covered today in the show notes, so if something caught your ear, you can dig into the original reporting there. That's the Data Center Daily for today. This is a Lantern podcast.